Life Fight with Jermaine Andre is a positive production of RareGem Productions. For previous episodes or to get new episode updates, subscribe to the Life Fight channel hosted on the Inspiration Network of OneRareGem.com. That's OneRaregem.com for the tools you need to take on your life fight. With U.S. Martial Arts Hall of Famer, two-time world champion, five-time U.S. champion, UFC vet, life coach, and author, Jermaine Andre. Visit JermaineAndre.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life Fight. It's Jermaine Andre with my co-host, Rebecca Beck.
Hello.
And we are here for another segment, and we're going to start things off because today is going to be a very, very controversial talk, which I'm hoping we can bring some solutions to.
Yep.
You know, as we go through this talk. But before we get into the mushy stuff, let's cover. We always like to cover self-defense technique in a certain type of situation. And if you listen to the last podcast, you heard Rebecca trying to take up the whole podcast, you know, asking about what martial art technique we use and this and that. And she was really trying to take control where, you know, this would be her show or something. I don't know what was going on, you know, so.
Well, it's a situation I'm always in, so I like to know the answer to it. Because I know that, you know, first of all, a lot of, you know, females go to the car wash and they go to vacuum their car and they're completely, you know, helpless when they're in their car and they're vacuuming their, you know, floorboard and everything out. And I always think about, you know, what would I do if because it's not even just what someone would do, you know, if they came up and they, you know, started fighting with me or something. I always think about if they actually pushed me in the car, shut the doors, and I was, you know, I didn't have any hands or anything, and they were on top of me, and I had to use some self-defense technique to completely, probably with one or two shots, get them to be knocked out cold so that I can get out of the car. Wow,
that's, man. And, well, we'll say starting it off, and I'm going to start it from, you know, from them coming up to you. If they were behind you, you know, a back kick, you know, from karate, you know, it's also from taekwondo and kung fu, and you just like kicking behind you like a, you know, a donkey kicking someone, just a basic back push kick. If you're leaning into the car, you know, facing in, and they come up behind you. If you're pushed and you end up landing, you know, on your back and you're facing the person, then the Muay Thai front push kick type kick, which is just, you know, we all know how to naturally do, just stomping at the person, stomping at their face, stomping at their body to try and push them out of the vehicle. Now, you really caught me with when you say if somebody pushed you in and jumped on top of you, because now, you know, you're locked down in position. You know, and of course, I would always say if you end up on your back on the ground, this is, as long as there's nobody else involved, this is where you want to be. As far as using jiu-jitsu, Russian sambo, you know, and the grappling arts, you know, you can lock them up, choke them out, use all kinds of stuff. But there's a detour here because you're not going to have room in a car to position yourself and position that person where you can, you know, use these types of you know, grappling techniques on them. So it's going to have to go to eye gouge. You know, I know we talk about the eye flick. And the eye flick is something where you just flick the person in their eye so they reach up and grab their eye, then they let you go and you can run away. You flick him in the eye if he's on top of you, you know, as far as he's jumped in the car and trying to hold you down, then that's probably just going to make him madder.
Yeah, then you have no escape.
Yeah, you have no
escape.
He's
still on top.
Yeah, so the eye gouge, however, which, you know, comes from kung fu, and it's actually a tiger's claw move where you actually grab in the side of the head with your fingers and you drive the thumbs into the eyeballs. Yeah. Now he can't escape, you know, and now you are doing serious damage. This is going to, you know, probably pop. You know, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it and lose all my female listeners. Yeah. But this is, you know, because it's true. Your life's in danger right here. So that's probably going to be the best technique you can use, because even a palm strike, you're not going to have any loading power, you know, and you can hit somebody. Don't take much, you know. I mean, you know, 10 pounds of pressure, you know, from a palm strike will break a human nose, which could make his eyes tear, you know, but I still don't think that's going to get him off of you, you know, and there's a thing of agitating them and making them madder. But taking both his eyeballs, you know, grabbing that tiger's claw, you're grabbing the base of the skull, the back of the skull with your fingers. So it's supporting so he can't pull his head away from you. Yeah. And then you take those thumbs and drive him in. And even when he pulls away, you just following his head, then he's going to do everything he can. And it's got to be quick. It's got to be fast, because he's going to try and grab your hands and pull them down. Yeah. So I would say that would be the probably the most effective that you could do in that position. Another good one, would be the ear. I teach you guys that, 15, 20 pounds of pressure will rip an ear off. It's just skin that holds it together. So you grab those ears with everything you got and yank and show him his ears. I think that might make a person, start to think differently about what's going on when you start ripping body parts off. And they say it doesn't take much to rip an ear off. Mm-hmm. So
it just kind of proves that, there are situations that you can get in that can be really avoided. Like the very first thing you said was, naturally, if someone came up, the first thing you would do is back kick them. It goes to show, our women listeners that you should learn some kind of self-defense, or you should take some self-defense course, so you don't ever get in those situations where you're, almost completely helpless unless you have some kind of training. So it's just worth it,
Well, like I say, awareness, self-defense is 99% awareness. Yeah. And it's because just like I say, even if you're not seeing everything, you're just aware of what's going on around you. And attackers look for you in certain positions, certain types of people. So, we've already talked about that a million times. So, taking a self-defense course and an awareness course is just going to boost your awareness and heighten your senses, where you see things that the everyday person doesn't. Yeah. And usually attackers aren't trying to set things up to attack people who are aware. Right. They're looking for the unaware individual. But another technique, and it's not a taught martial art technique, but I'm going to call it this because Bruce Lee used it. And see if you can remember from my martial art movie favorite podcast, when the Russian guy put him in an arm bar, sambo arm bar, he bit him. Yeah. That's right. You grab that face, man, and bite a cheek, and spit it back in his face. Yeah, I think that's gonna start making some things happen too. Yeah, and like I say, it's if you think about this, the best fighters in the world, animal wise, are like tigers, gorillas. Orangutans. Do you see what orangutans do to human beings when they get hold of them? You look up those when people get attacked. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? They bite. They hit hammer fists. They don't know martial arts. Yeah. They destroy people. They rip people apart because they just go ballistic on them. Yeah. And that's the main thing. Like I always tell, self-defense people, when it comes to self-defense, you have to be ready to fight. You have to say, F it, man. Yeah. Let's go. This is it. I don't care. Nothing else matters. And when you present that energy towards an attacker, dude, he's not going to be able to handle that. He's not even going to do it. That's animalistic, dude. Yeah. That's in every human being on this planet has that in them. Right. It's just that you have to make the decision to do it, and that's that moment. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I'm almost willing to say, I'll bet you $1,000 you're going to win. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because people who are out there attacking people, like I said, they're not looking for a fight. If they were, they'd be attacking people like me, or they'd be, going and doing cage fighting or doing something, else, or attacking cops, or, somebody who's going to give them a fight. They wouldn't be attacking women and things like that. Right. So
one thing I have to say to ladies is two things. Don't go to secluded areas when it comes to car washes and to vacuuming your car. At least go somewhere that's on the highway or that's lit up. And number two, don't put yourself in the vehicle where you are completely helpless. Keep your feet on the floor, keep yourself to the point where you still can escape or where you still can use some kind of move or technique before you actually get in the car. Because I see a lot of women who get completely in the car and their feet aren't even in the ground and they're completely trapped themselves. All you have to do is go shut the door and they're done. So.
And that's good. And like you said, the first thing, awareness. Don't go to a car wash that looks like it should be in a haunted house. Yeah. If it looks like Jason Voorhees and everybody else is over there hiding out, why are you? It's not that important to wash your vehicle. Yeah. So look for a place that looks inviting, that can be seen from the road by people driving by, where, that might save your life. Somebody attack you and somebody drive by and say, whoa, what was that? And they turn around and come by, or a cop drive by. So yes, you don't go to those ones that are hid and secluded. Then like you said, be in position where you can defend yourself, or like I say, every woman should have a self-defense tool. Yeah. And that should be in your hand. Yeah. One hand got the vacuum, the other one got your tool in it. Yeah. That way, somebody do something, you can pepper spray them, or you can hit them with the Kubotan, or if you're carrying a CCW, you can shoot them if you need to. And but that goes back to awareness and preparedness.
Yep. So I appreciate you letting me talk about the car wash.
I know you're big on the car wash thing, and like I said, I know I covered it in another podcast. Another thing too, if they come in while you spraying your car, that spray hose is a pepper spray. Yeah. You spray them right in the face with that, man, and that's gonna, they're gonna get it. That's things like little needles, shooting you. So that's definitely something they can use too.
All right.
So, all right. Well, moving along, today we're gonna be talking about cops and citizens, and the things that's going on with security training, police training, because this is something that's that's becoming a big issue now.
Yeah.
And I just had a security training workshop where I was training some security guys. Got a guy that's on the police force. Some guys who are becoming bouncers, and then just some everyday people who just wanted to know, these
the techniques,
the tactics, the things that they learn. Now, the first thing that I always teach all my security people, that I'm training, is that don't make so many enemies that you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
That's the number one rule. Don't get out there to make enemies, because one of the things about human beings is when you give them authority, they can get real egotistical.
Yeah.
Man. They can get crazy. And then when you give them authority and a group to hang with that got authority too,
yeah,
that can become bad.
Yeah.
They can start, and I learned this from, when I was a bouncer. And I had a crew of bouncers. And when everybody got together, everybody was Superman. Yeah. And they just wanted it. And it turned to the point where I had to let them know, the guys, you're being bullies.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be our job to protect people. We're supposed to be one step below the police, where we're here to protect people. When this guy comes in with his girlfriend, he feels safe. Not like we're going to crack his head open because, he had a little bit too much to drink. We're the one who sold him the liquor.
Yeah.
That we created the problem. Plus, this is the issue that we're supposed to always be ready to deal with. I always say to my guys, look, if you ever get mad at somebody for being a jerk, then you lost, because it's your job to deal with people who are being a jerk.
Yeah.
You are supposed to be superior to the average everyday Joe. You're supposed to be trained to properly every time. Every single time, not just this time. I had some problems at home, so I cracked that dude's head with a baton because he was getting on my nerves. That's not, now you're just being a bully. Now you're a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first thing I make them understand. And then I even say, this how it goes. You look at your pay like this. If you're getting paid $15 an hour, you get paid $10 an hour to do your job, and you get paid $5 an hour to put up with bull crap. And that's what you're there for. And anytime you step outside that realm, you start getting emotional, anything like that, then you're not a security guy. You're not a bouncer. You're not a bodyguard. You're not a cop. You're not you're not anything. Now you failed. You failed miserably, and you're pathetic is what you are when you start making those emotional responses. And now that's not saying emotional responses won't happen. It can happen, but when you got that stuck in the back of their head, it helps to keep it from happening.
Right.
Once you stand where I'm doing my job, like when I was one of the questions in my test when I certify people is, what are you trying to do to somebody who's out of line? And you're not trying to hurt them. You're not trying to beat them up. You're trying to get them under control. That's it. Just get them under control. Yeah. Because the only reason you're dealing with them and bothering this free American citizen who's got a right to do whatever he wants to is because he's out of control and he's doing something that's going to hurt him or hurt someone else or hurt you. So no matter what happens, I say, if he punch in your face 10 times and pull a knife and swing at you with the knife, and you have to draw your gun and pop, pop, pop and shoot him, you were shooting to get him under control. Don't ever have the thought in your mind that, that's who he think he is. I'm gonna kick the crap. He don't do that to me. I'm a officer, or I'm a security guy, I'm a bodyguard. You start thinking like that, then you're not. The whole idea of being a security guy, police officer, bodyguard is to be a servant to the public, a servant to those people. And when we start to lose, as security people start to lose the idea and the thought in our mind that we're here to help and serve, and we think that we're above them and we're this God. Now we're turning people into slaves. Yeah. And that ain't going to last long. America has proven it, over and over that American citizens ain't going to tolerate that. You're going to get a rebellion.
Yeah, but it's still, I still think that it's their bosses' jobs to, encourage them to get that type of training, because they're, they're in that situation because of the type of person that they are. They have this, ego, and they have this, fight in them, but that's what makes them a good security officer. So it's still the person that's hiring them out to say, you need this proper education for the business that I'm running. That is
just golden. Can I start taking you around to meetings
well,
with me?
Well, I have.
It's true.
I've seen you do that in meetings, and then they never call you back. I say, why are they not concerned about?
Because it costs money.
People who are,
because it costs money, and shamefully, a lot of venue owners, they don't think about liability that could happen later. And what happens is, because what I noticed when I was a bouncer, and this was 15 years ago when I started, was the owners then were looking for a bigger bully. Yeah. That's what they're looking for. They don't care how it gets handled. They just don't want the crap in their club. So they find the biggest bullies they can to bully the bullies in their club. And they get a big group of them. But then what happens, those bullies turn on the owner. Yeah. And I watched that happen. I stood there and watched one of the bouncers tell the owner, I'll break your face, you blah, blah, blah. And that owner could stand there like that, looking at me to help him. And I was like, I'm with them.
Yeah,
These my boys.
So.
I can't, my loyalty's to my boys, not to your $5 an hour, brother. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happens. They end up creating their own enemy because they're not thinking it through and they're not giving proper training. And it's the thing. Nobody can do their job correct without proper training. I don't care what your job is.
That's true.
You can't be a janitor without proper training. Right. That's not a crack at janitors, because I was a janitor. So everybody don't get it twisted. You know what I'm saying? So you can't even do that proper. And even being a janitor, when I learned how to do it proper, that's a skill set.
Yeah.
Knowing how to disinfect correct and make things smell right at the same time and make sure people don't slip and break their neck and kill themselves. So it's still a skill set to everything. Yeah. And what they would do, they would hire the biggest guy they could who wasn't afraid to handle problems and put him at the front door. And when something break off, get him. And so here comes this guy, who's just there trying to make some money, maybe for college, maybe for home, whatever it is, runs into a situation. What kind of restraining techniques are you using? He doesn't know how to handle it. So what happens? He gets afraid. He gets mad. Yeah. Now he starts swinging.
Right.
Now people getting hurt, people getting killed. Outside of that, you remember we just had recently, not too long ago, a bouncer here in St. Louis got shot and killed, at the door. And I knew people who knew him, and they told me, they said, he was a very rude guy.
Yeah.
He treated people really, really bad, man, and somebody got tired of it. So that's the first thing I tell bouncers. I say, look, I'm here to help you, number one, not get killed and not get sued.
Yeah.
And help you to like your job. And then I say to the owners, and I'm here for you to make sure your customers come back.
Yeah. Because customers are the main thing, though. It's just like fans at a fight. If you have people who don't care about the security that's watching over them when they're wasted and running into people, then it goes both ways. It's customers and it's the security officer. So I think if a boss knew that these customers wouldn't come anymore if I didn't have a good security team, they probably wouldn't not get them trained. So
and sometimes that's too far-fetched a view.
Yeah. Because
a lot of your venue owners look at what's going to attract them is the talent.
Yeah.
But we got such and such coming. So, we don't, they don't care.
Look at that.
We've
That's
got,
true.
and we're serving liquor.
Yeah.
And we got lights. So they're going to spend their money. They want to spend their money on the attraction, which is understandable because people do. They come in like cattle, whenever they say, boom, this is what's famous. You need to come see this.
Yeah. And
people pay their money for it. But what they don't realize, they won't be long lasting. Plus, you get a lawsuit in 5 years, you lose all of that.
Yeah.
It's gone. And I know there was a club owner, because when I created my program, I actually dealt with venue owners, who had been through being sued and everything, and they were behind me.
Yeah. And
that's how I started training all the security in St. Louis, like about 10 years ago. I trained all the bouncers out there and was in, all the clubs, Cobalt and Club Cheetah and Liquid and Velvet. And, I can go, and, in Club 217 in Illinois and, just traveling all over training all these bouncers and these bodyguards. And that was because this one club had a situation where a guy was out of hand, and it took 4 bouncers to restrain him.
Yeah.
All right. Now, they had no restraining techniques for one. Then they restrained him and got him under control, and they were carrying him upstairs to take him out. And one of the bouncers slipped and dropped him on his head on the stairs. He cracked his head open. All right. So the guy who got his head cracked open sued the club and won. And everybody said, well, how is that? And I said, because they took him off his feet. They took away his freedom of movement. So he's their responsibility.
Wow.
And people couldn't, that's not for us. Yes, it is. Because you're supposed to be superior trained. You're not supposed to crack this dude's head open just because he was drunk and out of line. You have him under control by taking away his freedom of movement and his way to save himself from falling down the stairs. Yeah. So now that's your responsibility to make sure he doesn't get hurt. Just like I teach my guys, say, if 2 guys get ready to fight and you restrain one of them, you know what your number one first job is? To make sure the other guy doesn't hit him.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll go, really? I said, yes. If you got him wrapped up and his arms are behind his back, he can't block.
Right.
He cannot protect himself. But that's the way that people have to think. And that's being superior.
Yeah.
Because the first thing now that, bouncers may want to think is, I'm going to shut it down by knocking everybody out. Nobody's fighting here but me. Wrong attitude, buddy. You're going to eat a bullet later.
Right.
You can be as tough as you want to from the front with your boys. From the back, nobody's tough. I always say that a bullet sit anybody down. And eventually, people are going to get tired of this. United States of America, we're old Wild West, and people will go and they'll get the gun and they'll bust a cap in, So that's the first thing I'm always trying to do with any kind of security, police and bodyguards that I train is don't make so many enemies that you don't know who they are. And with the venue owners, make sure you're keeping things, where you want your customers to come back. You don't want your bouncers hurt and dead, and then you don't want to create this bloodthirsty animal that's going to flip on you. And that's what happens. And then you want to fire them. And guess what? You just fired the meanest person in town. Come on. And you built them. I don't care what anybody starts saying anything. You kick the crap out of them. Get them out of my club. You built this. And now you're fired. Are you out of your mind? You think okay. Now he got no allegiance towards you. So now guess who getting shot and getting beat up when they come out the back door, So I try to bring understanding that to be a bouncer, to be security, to be a police officer, to be a bodyguard, this is an exquisite position. It's a highly honored position. It's a trusted position where people are looking at you to be strong for them, not to be strong for yourself. Anybody can do that. That's nothing. It's kind of like I tell you, the person who says, I love my kids. That's great. Who don't love their kids? But to love everybody else's kids, that's superior. And to say, man, I love your kids and I'm going to do what I can to help everybody's kids. That's what we want to hear. That's the same thing. When you stand there being strong and lifting weights to protect myself and knock everybody out that insults my ego, that's weak. That's nothing. But to stand strong and help those who can help themselves, now that's superior.
I know you were a bouncer to a lot of high-end celebrities. So did you have any situation?
Bodyguard, yes.
Bodyguard. What did I say?
You said bouncer.
Oh, bodyguard. I'm sorry. You were a bodyguard.
There's a small difference between the two.
The big difference. But
there is. And what are you asking about it?
Did you ever have any situations that you had to get into that were big situations, like anything that you ever had to actually protect?
Tons of. I mean, you see the scars on my face.
Yeah.
These are life and death situations. The one on my forehead and one on my left eye was I woke up in a pool of blood, almost died. And there are, and this the thing about those situations. If I tell you, I have to kill you.
Is that another podcast?
No. That's all. What do you call that's restricted information, confidential information. We're not allowed because of discretion. And also outside of that, in the Muay Tiger book that's coming out, there I go over a couple of with some good name changes and things. There are a couple of situations in the book. So we're gonna say tell them they got to buy the book later when I release the book to get those answers.
All right.
One of the things too that I teach. Cops, I teach security, bodyguards, agents, anybody is the best solution is to, allow a man's way out. Now, of course, there are people you got to arrest, people you have to take down. And that's not who I'm speaking of. I'm speaking of situations that get agitated, where the situation is just, an interview. And when an interview state means you see somebody doing something, it's not, he didn't just rob a bank or, he didn't just hit somebody in the face with a bottle or something like that, but you just see something where you have to go see what's going on.
Right.
And when you make your approach, you want to give them a man's way out. And actually, as far as you talk about my situations, something in bodyguarding, that's more confidential than bouncer. Here's an example. When I see two guys about to fight in the club, like I say, usually, the bouncers run up and they start knocking people out. They walk up, hey, start yelling and screaming at them and try to intimidate them down, try to punk them out, as I would call it. I'll go up and I say, hey man, look, hey, whoa, fellas, look, I don't know what y'all doing, in here, want to fight and bang, but I don't feel like having to try and restrain one of y'all and one of y'all throwing me through a wall or something like that. And look, I'm gonna just put it like this, that fine girl over there been looking at you all night, and you wanna roll around with this dude instead of her, which is cool, because if that's what you want to do, we're gonna let y'all roll around, then we're gonna pepper spray y'all, and I'm gonna go get that girl, and I'm gonna take her home with me, and you can go ahead and y'all both gonna get kicked out together, so y'all can go home together. That's what you want, what I'm saying? Or you can chill out and go get on that gal that been looking at you before I get it, and maybe I'll get you a beer or something.
Right.
When I talk to him like that, that shuts everything down. He feels respected. It calms him down. They laugh. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, man. All right, I'm cool. Just like even there's a restraining technique I created that I trained all of the bouncers in. And I was just getting phone call after phone call. Oh my God, that technique is so excellent. And what the technique does is sits you on your butt.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. It's called a crossing guard. The way you use it, it sits you right on your butt on the floor, and you're not hurt. And they said, all of them said that whenever they did it on somebody who was mad, they get ready to fight, they said the person either laughed or they said, what the hell did you just do to me?
Right.
You know, and so the guy's not hurt. He's not embarrassed. He's not beat up, but you showed him, I can sit you on your butt like that. Don't make me go to work.
Right. That makes sense.
You know, and so now this guy leaves. He's not mad. He didn't take his friends away. Nobody, the girl standing there who was watching too close didn't get her teeth knocked out with an elbow. You know what I'm saying? The security guards aren't hurt. The bouncers aren't hurt. He leaves. He's laughing. You know, his boys laughing. They just set you straight down like nothing. Yeah, man, I don't know what. He comes back next week. I'm sorry, man. I was just, you know, so that. Now, now he's still a good customer.
Yeah.
You know, plus you didn't lose any other customers having a big wild fight or something like that.
So you verbally attacked it. You didn't have to lay a hand on him.
Right. And it's the whole energy of having that respect towards them. And that's why I say you give a person a man's way out.
Yeah.
Most of the time when you're dealing with somebody, they don't want to be disrespected. You know, they don't want to feel like you treat them like they're nothing. You know, just like I even tell the bouncers, when you get them to the door, walk them out the door. Let them walk. And if they, man, F you, I'll kick you. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know you will. Yeah. That's why we glad you leaving. Yeah. You know, and that's what I thought. You know, so let them have it.
Yeah.
Don't, man, I'll kick you. What? Who you think you talk? And they run out in the street. What are you doing fighting in the street? Yeah. That's not even a club. He's out. You know what I'm saying? So it's that whole thing of that type of mentality. But again, you know, you get most of your pay to do your job and you get the rest of it to put up with bull crap. And if you keep that in your mind, you can't get mad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the verbal judo of, you know, setting down that situation instead of letting it escalate into something where somebody end up having to get seriously hurt.
Right. So you say man's way out. Was there ever, did you ever have to give a woman's way out? Man,
women are hard to deal with.
Who fought more in the clubs, women or men?
I use men, of course. But women get going because women, if they get going, they got a good reason because they ain't coming to fight. You know, women come in the club to look good. That's what they come to, look good and make you chase them. Men come most of the time to look tough. So your problem's usually going to be with men. But what happened with the women, I use the same tactic. And I've had to deal with that with women. I said, whoa, ladies. Y'all are too gorgeous to be in here cat scratching each other.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You get ready to tear that beautiful face up and look at your dress. You going to mess that dress up over what? So it's still kind of the same. I use the same tactic.
That makes sense.
I'm complimenting them.
Yeah.
And when I start complimenting them, you know what I'm saying? That's how human beings are. We want to be complimented.
Yeah.
You know, just like the guy, man, look, I don't want to have to grab you and you throw me through a wall. Now he looking at me and the first thing he expected me to say, look, you little mother, if you don't back down, I'm going to do this and that. So I'm already complimenting him, even though I'm big, and he's saying, whoa, this big dude complimenting me. Maybe I can get more compliments from him later. Maybe he can make me look good more later. So now I got a choice to get in the fight, maybe not look good and get thrown out, or go with him and he can make me look good later. Maybe I'll bring the girls around. You know what I'm saying? So all this is happening subconsciously, you know, in their head. And I diffused the situation and didn't make any enemies. Now I don't have to watch my back when I walk out the door that night.
Makes sense.
You know, so
good tactics.
Yeah. So offering them a man's way out. One of the things too that I'm really doing for, you know, security and especially let's talk about get more onto police officers, because we all know, you know, you just had an unarmed shoot in South Carolina and the officer shot the guy in the back while he was running away. Now they got into a struggle over the taser with the police officer, and you know the taser hit the ground and the guy ran off and the cop just opened fire on him. Pop, 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 pop. So the guy wasn't a threat to the officer, and they arrested him. Yeah. The police officer, he got charged with murder. So they making a move on this one. And we all know that the Mike Brown incident, you know, that was, you know, that's still controversial of what happened there. Rodney King, if everybody can remember that, back in the day, they put it on him with the nightsticks, and he won that suit. The cops were wrong. They had the choking incident, I think in New York, where the police officer choked the guy to death who he didn't make an attack or didn't make an action. Saw the video of that one. Mm-hmm. He didn't make an attack or make any aggressive move. Now, I don't know what was going on there because, you know, like I said, I don't make any judgments unless I go to the court case or I was standing there. You know what I'm saying? So, but the one thing I don't want in our country is, number one, cops feeling like they have to shoot unarmed citizens and use deadly force on unarmed citizens. And I don't want cops afraid to shoot bad guys that really need to be shot, because that's what happened. Cops are in such a tight position now where, you know, they're going to stop shooting and people going to start shooting them and taking their guns and open firing on the neighborhood. And everybody's like, why didn't he shoot him? He should have shot him a long time ago. So that, you know, the people, I think one of the things is in dealing with these issues, you know, and of course, you know, no cops would be, you know, shooting somebody they shouldn't have to shoot. But one of the other things that happen too is people start losing value for the police officer's life.
Yeah.
And the fact that he still is a human being, when they get in these situations consistently every single day, these are situations that other people can't handle, that a normal human being, that's why they call the cops. Because somebody's flying off the handle going crazy, so they call the cops. The cops come, and they just came from a call like this.
Yeah.
And they don't know if a shotgun's getting pulled this time. They don't know if a knife is getting pulled this time, so they're on edge because of what they're dealing with. And I think a lot of times they want people may want the cop to stand down so long that they don't care if the cop even gets killed. And they don't think about the cop thinking that, hey, I got a life here. I got a wife at home. I got kids at home, and I want to make it home tonight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they are ready to move. They're ready to fire. And I always say this too, cops they still trained killers. They are taught, they get a gun put in their hand. They get taught to shoot at a target to kill. They get shown what a bullet does to the skull, what it does to the chest, and they are taught to unload the clip on you if they have to use their gun.
Yeah.
If they have to use their gun, it's because it's a moment for deadly force. People say, well, why didn't you just shoot them in the leg? You can't do that because you can shoot somebody in the leg and kill them. Then the cop will say, well, I wasn't trying to kill him. I was just trying to wound him. Well, you should have never shot him in the first place. Yeah. A bullet is deadly force. So that's why I really want to get on this with police officers, because I want to get understanding to everybody what's going on. And now the training that cops have went through, and it's been like a time frame here that's happened. You can think back in the days, I know when I was a kid, all your cops were tough.
Yeah. They
all could kick your butt. You knew it. If a cop came around, it wasn't you. People wasn't getting shot. You got your butt kicked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You got smart with a cop. They'll kick your butt, and they probably wouldn't even take you to jail. They just beat you up and leave you sitting there. Your parents will call the cops, come over and kick your butt. But the cops were tough back then.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hand to hand and maybe a nightstick. Well, now things have advanced where now there's tasers, pepper spray, nightsticks, and people will say, well, why didn't the cop just hit him? Why didn't the cop just restrain him? Why didn't he do this? Why did he do that? And I teach restraining. Most restraining I teach gets taught to security, bouncers who don't carry guns, don't carry tasers. They don't carry this stuff. And this is the liability you deal with restraining as far as police officers go. Whenever you try to restrain somebody, it's because they're being non-compliant, which means they're fighting. They may not be trying to attack you, but they are resisting. And when you lay hands on them, they're going to resist harder. So now you got a strong human being who might be stronger than you resisting against you, and it's going to turn into a struggle. So in this struggle, you might fall and boom, and bump. The cop might bump his elbow and scrape his elbow bad, shatter his hand, snap a wrist. 15 pounds of pressure like that, snaps a wrist, fall and bust his knee up. So now, not only is this officer injured, he's off the job. Yeah. So they just lost, that's a police officer down. Now, these cops have to deal with people all day long, 24 hours a day. Cops are out there. And if they're restraining people, all day long restraining, they're probably losing 10, 20 cops a day to injuries, because of this. So they say we can't afford that because it's costing the taxpayers, where everybody's saying, you're paying too much for the police, Yeah. So that's why they invented these tools, these subduing tools, taser, baton, pepper spray. So now they're saying use this stuff before you lay hands, because if you lay hands, number one, you might not win.
Yeah.
Number two, he can grab your gun. Number three, you might get injured. Yeah. Now you off the clock, and we got to find somebody to replace you. And we're losing officers all day long. And now you don't have, and there's no officers on the street because they're all got a shattered elbow or shattered knee or something. And then you think about a 50-something-year-old cop who's been on the force for 30 years. Put his time in. Yeah. You can't just fire him because he can't throw people through a wall anymore.
Yeah.
He's out there still doing his job. He's been loyal. So what's going to happen when he's got to grab some young, buffed, weightlifting, steroided 22-year-old football player, who's acting a fool, and he tries to restrain this guy? It ain't going to happen. He's going to get destroyed. Is it worth him getting his back broken? So they invented these tools to advance police work. Now, this is where it goes, where people say, well, when these cops get into these fight situations, they're just open firing and shooting because they're afraid. And the only time anybody should shoot and kill somebody is if they're afraid for their life. You shouldn't be shooting and killing anybody outside that unless it's, a military situation. But as far as cops being on the streets, security and police like that, there's still people who are supposed to be protectors and servants to the citizens. Yeah. So it's not a military action where you're coming in and just laying everybody down to secure that whole area.
So why do you think they're afraid? Do you think they're afraid because they're undertrained, or do you think they're just afraid because,
Getting back, thank you. You see, I had that block there. Going all the way back to how it used to be. All right. Now because cops depend more on tools.
Yeah.
That's what their training is more, taser, baton, firearm, radio, don't deal with the issue unless you have other officers there with you. Call for backup first. So they don't get a lot of hand-to-hand combat training.
Yeah.
They don't get a lot of tough guy training. Now, in saying that, I think police still expect people to respond to them, when they got a badge on, the way that we used to respond to cops 20 years ago, because they kicked the crap out of them, with their hands and feet if we didn't do what they told us to do. Well, now it's not like that anymore, because now people feel that cops can't fight.
Yeah.
So when this cop says, "Hey, you," and he barks at somebody, they say, "Man, you ain't gonna tell me," the cop goes, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Now there's nothing he can do because he ain't got no serious hand-to-hand training, where he's gonna, man, I'll whoop your, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of where it goes into where the cops may be afraid and they start having to go to tools and start having to go to guns. And this is certain cops, not saying all cops.
I hear you.
So as far as it being that issue, and the fact that them not having that type of training because they are designed to use their tools. Yeah. And let me give you a really good example. I had a student who was on the anti-terrorist team in the military. He trained under me for a long time, and he went overseas when we were having all the war problems. Came back and he said, "Man, he said, Jermaine, I can't believe the crap that they're teaching us in the military." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Our hand-to-hand, so our knife, because I teach a lot of knife stuff, and I'm, old school Russian, Russian techniques and Japanese techniques. So I got it's a lot of really good stuff." And I said, "Well, you guys, what do you learn with your knife? And what do you learn with this?" And he was telling me they don't learn this, they don't learn that. There's the hand-to-hand is real low. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would the military be doing that? And I'm saying to myself, now that can't be right. And so he says to me, he said, well, he said he actually presented the idea of bringing me in to, one of his superiors. And his superior said, if you're in a situation and you have to go to hand, you have already failed. And he was, my student was mad about that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, wait a minute. Whoa. I said, I understand what he's saying. He's saying that everything is supposed to be strategically, intelligently done where you shouldn't have to fight with fists.
Yeah.
Because if you're fighting with fists, then somebody didn't give the right information. You guys didn't shoot when you were supposed to shoot. You didn't secure the area like you were trained to secure the area, because they're not counting on you to be a better fist fighter than him. Yeah. They're counting on you to use the $1 million worth of equipment so you don't have to prehistorically use your fist or a knife. So it made sense to me then. So I was like, oh. I said, now I see. They can't waste time, training you how to be a great MMA fighter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When that ain't going to happen anyway, because you're going to get shot at 300 yards. So they're trying to teach you how to shoot at 300 yards. So I moved that thought over to what's happening with police now.
Yeah.
Is that they're getting trained so much in, just the tools that they have that they're not receiving any training in hand-to-hand. Now, the only thing that I don't like about that is when you know how to handle yourself hand-to-hand wise. You know what I'm saying? It gives a strong sense of confidence. Yeah. It's just like, even citizens getting their CCW. Everybody goes and does a thing. They get a CCW and they get this, they feel tougher because they have a gun. Now, I'm a person, I know guns, I know knives, I know just about everything. And a gun doesn't make me feel secure, because I know that a gun can be taken, it can be, and you can miss, it's hard. So it can be hard to get to, you can shoot somebody and they can still continue to attack, so I know that a gun doesn't make you superior. It's the person behind the gun. Yeah. But if you're superior behind the gun, you're going to be superior with a knife. You're going to be superior with your hands because it's all the same thing. Right. But it all comes from training. And the main part of that training is dealing with real issues and dealing with brain shocks that prepare you. So if let's say you got two guys, you got a marksman who shoots a target every day and he's really, really good with his gun. But he doesn't do any boxing, any kind of contact, any hand-to-hand training. But he's superior with his gun. And then you got this guy over here who can shoot a gun good, but he boxes, he does hand-to-hand, he does martial arts, he's training all the time. When those two get in a situation, the one who's dealing with stressful issues all the time and having to respond in a fighting environment is going to be way better than the guy who's just a great marksman, because he may be good shooting at the target when nobody's attacking him and there's no stress. But when the stress hits, now he's not used to that and things change. And that's where I think, that's where I'm trying to bring the training to the police officers.
Yeah.
So they've got this hand-to-hand again that's going to bring them that confidence so that fear drops.
Yeah.
Where they're not afraid when somebody barks back. F you ain't going to do nothing. And they know that, well, I can't shoot him yet because he's not a threat.
Yeah.
But what happens is, what happens when we get afraid? First of all, our intelligence drops 20%. It sinks. So we have no options but now I'm an officer. I can't let them treat me like this running people. So I escalate the situation by barking louder.
Right.
Now hands get laid. And I mean, what other choice did you have but to do that? Because that's the only training you got.
Yeah. Well, especially if the person on the streets has a gun and they feel that the only battle is that this cop has a gun and I have a gun, then you're right. They have no fear towards them because they feel like they have the same equal, fighting thing or fighting capability.
Well, it goes what I say, a bullet don't know the difference.
Yeah.
It's going to trap. And the last thing you want, citizens are supposed to, the police officers are supposed to be the cavalry.
Yeah. For
the neighborhood. And citizens are supposed to feel happy when the police show up. And like I say, you can get to also, like I say, there are cops out there who do their job great. Something happens in a neighborhood. Let's say somebody gets shot. And they come in. They try to do everything they can. Knock on doors. Hey, who did this? Anybody know? Knocking on doors. Knocking on anybody. Hey, who did? And nobody wants to talk.
Yeah.
So then they say, well, hey, man, nobody will tell us anything. We can't solve these cases. We can't stop crime in your neighborhood because you guys won't talk. And I say, I understand it, but you got to understand them.
Yeah.
You know why they're not talking? Because they don't want to be next.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they don't want their kid to get shot while he's walking to the school bus because they ratted out the guy that killed the last guy.
Yeah.
So this is a problem that the cops and the citizens got to work on together. But the thing goes back to the cure, having compassion for each other, try to understand each other, respecting each other, and then going through education on how can we solve this issue.
Yeah.
We understand, okay, officers, that you guys can't solve these cases and lower crime because nobody's testifying or whatever. And we understand you guys aren't testifying because you're fearing for your life. Now, how do you solve that? That's what the situation is. That's what the problem is. Because the last thing you want is is the citizens hating the people who are supposed to be there to protect them.
Yeah.
You don't want that. I'm talking about any citizen in any neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? It's not an issue like what happens with Ferguson and the police officers. People want to take a side. Either you're on the cop side or you on black people's side. If you're not on Mike Brown's side, you hate black people. If you're not on on Darren Wilson's side, you hate cops.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. The issue is they ain't getting along over there.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. Something's not going right, and it needs to get solved to the issue of trying to get them back to get along. And I think a lot of that will stem from the police receiving a different type of training. This is a different era.
Yeah.
It's way more dangerous for cops. You got police officers quitting. I had some students at my school who were going in to be cops. When this issue happened, they said, I'm not going to be a cop. I'm going to be a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking to some hardcore people. Like, I was like, yeah, you're going to be, a good cop. You're going to be awesome, man. And they're like, I'm not putting myself in that position. Yeah. Because the main thing that happens when you get a situation like what happened is not only does somebody die and, a family's hurt, a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a cousin, of whatever situation, then a police officer is in danger because people hate him and they're after him. There's cops he's got to deal with at the station and all that stuff, regarding what happened there. But the main thing that happens is police work gets destroyed.
Yeah.
For the past 30 years, police have been doing everything they can to make people stop hating cops.
Yeah.
You got DARE out there. You got cops going into schools. You got cops buying Christmas presents for kids. You got all this great stuff cops are trying to do what?
Right.
To reconnect with the citizen and say, we're your friend. And then when something like that happens, now all that just went to crap. Police work just got set back another 20 years. And now all the cops feel threatened. Now you got this cop who was trying to be a good guy, trying to do a good job. And now somebody shot at him or somebody yelling in his face, you pig, you ain't nothing, I this and that. And he's saying, damn. Yeah. Now what is he supposed to do? Now he's got to get on air. So that's what happened. And I think, it's got to go back into the training of, getting the officers trained. Of course, it's got to get back into getting the citizens straightened out and stuff like that. But right now, me personally, I've noticed the difference that I've made in bouncers and security people when I put them through this type of training. where you're learning to, for one, you're going to be a straight badass. You're going to be dope in every area. Somebody lay hands on you, you're going to light them up.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. That's number one, because you are. It's your job to protect, so you should be the baddest person in the room. So you're going to be bad but naked.
Yeah.
If you got nothing on, you ain't got no uniform, no badge, no gun, no taser, you're going to be, all right, let's go. I'll whoop your butt. You know what I'm saying? And that right there is going to present a respect to everybody. That's going to stop a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be bad with your baton. Then you're going to be bad with your pepper spray. Then you're going to be bad with your gun. Then you're going to be bad with your taser. Then you're going to be bad with an ink pen.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be bad with a credit card. Then you're going to be bad with rolling a magazine. I'm going to show you all this stuff.
Yeah.
And once you got that, I think that sheds that, like I do with when I train those bouncers like that, they don't have issues at their clubs anymore, because that confidence shows, and people look at them and they know that this guy knows something. So and that's I think that'd be a big help.
So do you think in the Mike Brown and Darren Wilson situation that he was undertrained, and do you think there was a step he could have taken first before he took did the situation in the shooting with Mike Brown?
I can't say because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
People ask me about that, and this is what I say. If Mike Brown attacked him through that window and hit him, you're taking a risk as an officer. Number one, it don't take, hit like that, what I just did there, and I just barely hit my hand. You can tap somebody on the chin with, 30 pounds of pressure and knock them unconscious. So if he hit him, then that officer is at risk of losing his firearm. Because if he hits him and knocked him out, now he's got his gun. Yeah. Now he's going to shoot and kill him. Now he's on the neighborhood. Now everybody, why didn't that cop shoot him? You know what I'm saying? So if that's what happened, I wasn't there. Yeah. I don't know. If he did hit him, then I agree with having to shoot. You know what I'm saying? Because you feel that your firearm, you attack a police. These are pit bulls, man.
Yeah.
They are trained to kill. You don't run around attacking cops.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's because I don't want to. We don't want to mob outside saying I'm against Mike Brown and I'm this and that. Because that's not the situation I'm in. Like I said, what I'm against is us having police officers feeling that they have to shoot unarmed citizens.
Yeah.
And I'm against police officers being afraid to shoot people who need to be shot.
Yeah.
That's what Jermaine Andre is against. That's my stance right there. You know what I'm saying? So, and Bill Shoes sitting here with me, he ain't going to let y'all edit my crap later to say, oh, Jermaine Andre, so you can see on newspapers. But, yeah, so that's where it sits with that. If a police officer, is in danger of feeling that, he's going to lose his firearm, then he has to go to deadly force.
Yeah.
That's no different like I teach a bouncer. If somebody punches you in your face, that is deadly force. You got the right to hit them back in their face, which is deadly force. Anytime you hit somebody in the head, you can accidentally kill them.
Yeah.
That's lethal force. So that's where that sits at. And like I say, police officers, they're trained to do that. So you don't want to be messing with them.
Right. At the end of the day, with police officers, it goes all the way back to teachers and bullying and just the new era that we're in. We're in a new generation. Everyone has to update. Different things. Different things are happening. We need new training with teachers, with police officers. The whole 9 yards.
Right, kids are being programmed by video games to be murderers and robbers and thieves, and and when a lot of people, and that's another podcast. What we watch, what we see, what we hear educates us and programs our brain, and that's what these kids are dealing with. I can remember when the song "Cop Killer" came out by Ice-T, and he put that "cop killer, I want to be a cop killer," and man, that flipped everybody to start hating cops. I remember when rap music started coming on, he started telling, because it even did it to me, and that, when you get the Muay Tiger book, you'll see how that affected my life. I'm gonna tell you this: I have never had a cop harass me in my life, and that's the truth. And I'm a black dude, you know what I'm saying? I'm a black and Native American, all kinds of
with
stuff,
a mohawk.
French, with a mohawk, but I have never had any time a cop mess with me is because I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. Yeah. And most of my dealings with cops have helped me out. I've even had I remember I was driving through Chesterfield one time and a police officer pulled me over and he said, "You're speeding." And I said, "No, I wasn't." He said, "Yes, you were." I said, "Well, what's the speed limit?" And he said, what did he say? 55. I said, "Oh, crap. I guess that proves I was speeding." He said, "What'd you say?" I said, "I guess that proves I was speeding. I had my cruise control set at 65. Because I had just came from where it was 60. Yeah. He said, "Get the hell out of here and slow down." You know what I'm saying? Then I had another time, one of the best situations. I'm not going to say the state because a state trooper pulled me over, white guy. Pulled me over. I was in a car, bad tags, bad exhaust, tinted windows, my driver's license was bad, everything. He pulled me over. Registration was bad, everything, because I had no money. The situation, I was broke. I was trying to be a fighter. I was a pioneer MMA. You make $50 a fight. And the officer's like, "Hey, this car is illegal as hell." I'm going to have this impounded. And I just dropped my head, man. I said, man, I'm trying hard and everything I'm doing just ain't working. And the officer said, what'd you say? I said, nothing. I said, I'm trying my best, man. And just every damn thing I try to do just ain't working.
Yeah.
You know, and he walked back to his car and he came back up. He said, get out your car. And I got out. I'm like, damn, here we go. He said, I want you to face me and just nod your head. Yes, you understand? And I was like, yeah. He said, no, don't talk. Just nod your head. Yes. So I nod my head. He said, my cruise is low on gas. I want you to stay here and wait for me. Okay. And I nodded my head. Yes. And he said, get the hell out of here.
Wow.
I said, well, you going to try and cheat? He said, get the hell out of here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That was gangster for that cop to do that for him, because my car, he should have took that car off the road, you know, and I got out of there. So that's what I'm saying. So there are good cops out there who are trying to help people who are taking risks themselves. You know, he could, as a state trooper, man, he'd have got tore apart for that.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? But he helped me out just that easy, just that good. So I think we as the citizens and the cops have got to come back to the thing that we're still all together and we're the same people and start caring for each other.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I think the citizens are showing too, that we don't care about your life. Just don't be messing our life up.
Yeah.
But I think if the citizens show, well, look, we care about your life too, and we understand, you know, that this and that can happen, and let's try and work on everything that we can and make you guys feel comfortable being heroes.
Yeah.
I think that can help solve the problem also.
So it sounds like they both need the cure.
Both sides need the cure. Yeah, they need a cure. So compassion, understanding, respect, and education.
Absolutely.
Yep. And it help us all. So, well, anything else you got, Rebecca?
I think that sums it up.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Like I said, always just trying to bring you the information to get us all thinking. You know, myself and Rebecca are not here to tell you how to think or what to think. We're just here to help you to start thinking. So always open. Please feel free to go to my Facebook page and, you know, give suggestions, give thoughts. If you disagree with me, please tell me. I love when people disagree with me because, one, I'm going to argue you down to death. And two, if you are right, I want to know, because I don't like being wrong. So I'm going to be like, oh, man, this person proved me right. Now I'm not wrong anymore. So all you did was help me anyway. But great talking to you. See you next time on Life Fight.
Bye.
For all things Jermaine Andre, get books, get trained. Learn the secrets behind his brawn, his brain, and his edge. Visit JermaineAndre.com. Life Fight with Jermaine Andre is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.